Greetings, viewers. Eric the Car Guy here, back again with another live show for you where I answer your automotive questions that you submit to my Google Plus page. First of all, thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. It's no fun doing this alone. That being said, a few things I want to touch on before we get started. First of all, if you're watching this video on YouTube, I cannot see those comments, so I will not be able to answer those comments on YouTube. Apologies for that. Also, comments posted after the show is concluded to Google+. Those questions will not be answered also. If you get them in during the course of the show, great. If you submitted them early, even better. Outside of that, I apologize. I'm not going to be going back over those questions. So if you don't get them during the show, sorry. That said, if you still have automotive questions, I don't get to your question today, that type of thing, I ask that you go to EricTheCarGuy.com. There's a plethora of things available to you that can help you with those automotive issues, should you have them. And in fact, there's a welcome video to tell you about some of those things. I suggest checking the FAQ page to start with. There's a lot of useful things there. So if you have questions, I don't get to them, EricTheCarGuy.com is the place to go. So first, I want to start by thanking Zep for sending me a cool t-shirt. Actually, they sent me several cool t-shirts. And today, I got a box of stuff from them that I'm going to be trying out. So thank you, Zep, for providing me with some fun stuff that I'll be able to use at the shop in the coming months, weeks, what have you. But now that we have those pleasantries out of the way, why don't we just dive in and start answering your questions, because that's what I'm really here for, right? Right. All right, and the other thing is this will be the last show this year. So last show, 2014, I started doing these. We're up to number 32 now, so we've got a few of these under my belt. Thank you for helping to make this show a success. Thank you for submitting your questions, watching the shows, commenting, all that stuff. Really appreciate it. But the next show will be January 7th is when I'll be coming back. So I'm going to go on winter break, do all that kind of thing, and going to start it up again on the 7th next year. So just to throw that out there. All right. This was a funny comment. I'm just going to read it from Gary Robertson. He's going to jump into my Speedos and swim to the show from Scotland. You are all that is man. But good luck with that. All right, moving on now to some real automotive questions. And don't worry, I might run it a little long tonight just to try to get as many questions as I can. As I said, this will be the last show for a bit. All right, from Jason Whipple. Hi, Eric. Love the channels and a big fan of what you do. Always hear my questions. Let's start that over. Hey, Eric, love the channels and a big fan of what you do. Anyways, here's my question. I have a 1998 Mercedes MI320. My question is about gas. I normally run regular 87 octane, and it is supposed to run at least 91. Now am I doing any damage to the motor? It's got 186,000 on it. It doesn't seem to perform different. I have used 91 when I can find it around me, or 93, but switched to 87 when gas prices were high. So I put 91 in when I fill up last week, and it seems to be burning more through it this time. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas. Have a happy and safe New Year. All right. Thank you, Jason. That is an excellent question. And I've actually done a video about octane and what it means. And probably a brief explanation of what octane means. Now, depending upon where you're from, in the United States, we use the RM2 method of measuring octane. So in other words, I'm saying this show goes out worldwide. Your octane ratings may be different than the octane ratings that I'm talking about. So they use different methods to rate the octane of gasoline or petrol, depending upon where you're from. Okay, now here's the long and the short of it. The higher the octane, the more it has a resistance to burning. And the reason they do this is for higher compression or performance engine or forced induction engines. They put more of a squeeze on the air-fuel mixture. So as the piston comes up, there's a greater difference in the volume from when it starts out at the bottom than when it goes up to the top. This is called the compression ratio. And many times it's measured in parts. So once you get past the, like say, just for easy numbers, 10 to 1, So say once you get past that 9.5, 10 to 1 in, and this also depends on cam timing and some other things. They've done some other kinky things inside an engine to make it run on, you know, it perform better, run higher compression and not have these issues. But anyway, the more squeeze you have on that mixture, so you get above 10 to 1-ish, let's call it, it creates a tremendous amount of heat. Whenever you compress air or something like that, it heats up. So when you add fuel to that, that makes it combustible and volatile. So if you squeeze it too much, it might ignite before the spark plug tells it to do so. If that happens, you get either what's called, well, you get a couple of things, preignition or detonation, which means basically the mixture ignites without the spark plug firing it off. And you don't want that. The engine is all set up to work at a given time. Timing is very important in the internal combustion engine. Things have to happen at the right time in order for it to have maximum power, in order for it to run correctly. So in the case of a performance engine or a vehicle like yours that calls for a higher octane fuel, there's some reason that it's required that you run a higher octane fuel in there. Now, newer engines have knock sensors, and that knock sensor is there to sense detonation and preignition and those types of things that can be potentially damaging to the engine, and as a result, it retards the ignition timing. So in a way, they've built in self-preservation into these engines that take higher octane fuels. Mercedes with those kind of miles on it, and you know, it's really difficult to say how much damage you're actually doing, and also what I said about the knock sensor. So it's trying to preserve itself, and it seems that you also alluded to the fact that you were burning through more fuel lately, and that may be because of winter blends. Winter blends are a little more volatile than summer blends. So there's actually different blends of fuel that they use depending upon what the season is. So they change over when they do it. So the winter blend, you may burn through a little more of that. I often hear complaints of that in the wintertime. People say I'm going through a tank of gas quicker, but there's a few things that contribute to that aside from the different fuel. And that's the fact that, okay, you go out in the morning, it's really cold outside, your windshield's covered in ice. You go out, you start it up, maybe go inside, finish your coffee, come out, scrape it off later. Well, the whole time the vehicle is running, you're using fuel. So therefore, you're not going to get the same mileage as you would when you're, you know, during the summer months and you're not letting it warm up and doing those things. So there's several things that contribute to it. But Jason, getting back to your initial question, and I'm sorry I've gone off on this tangent. What damage can you do? I'm going to say probably not much, but in order to get the best performance out of that engine, you should be running the correct octane. And I say this based on my own experience. My Acura Vigor takes premium unleaded, and I actually have been running it, especially lately. Gas prices have been down. I've been running it, and it does perform better as a result of running that higher octane fuel in there. I did run it for a time just on regular cheap gas, the lower octane fuels. It didn't perform as well. It was barely noticeable, but it didn't perform as well as it did on the premium fuels. And partly that may be because of the knock sensor, like I said, because hey, here's the thing, you won't really hear preignition or detonation. When you actually get to the point where you hear it, say it's on a scale of 1 to 10, you won't start actually, and that's the severity of the preignition. So the severity of preignition scale of 1 to 10, you don't actually start to hear it till around 7. So in other words, it could be preigniting, or you might have detonation and not even hear it, not even know it. The engine does. That's what that knock sensor is for. Yeah, I wanted to spend some time on this question because it's a question I get a lot. So sorry I ate up a lot of time with that. There will be a link in the description to the video that I mentioned about octane. And as I said, in different parts of the world, they use different methods. So the octane ratings that you see, different altitudes also affect it. So higher altitudes, you may never see a 91 octane. 87 may be the highest you see, and it may go down to 91. Why? The air is thinner. There's less of it. So they want to use a more volatile fuel because you have less oxygen in the air to work with for combustion. There's a lot there. But I hope that answers your question. As far as damage, that's a tough one. It's really difficult for me to say whether or not it's being damaged on an older car like that. It's hard to justify putting expensive fuel in something like that. If it was a cream puff, put the fuel in it, put premium in it, and run the premium in it. If it's a reliable POS, yeah, just run what you can afford and hope for the best, because there may be other issues that could crop up. But Mercedes usually makes a pretty well-made vehicle, so it should hold up well. I'm moving on now, and I'm moving on to, let's see, Gabe Concerioid. That's the other thing I sometimes do on the show. If you're not familiar with it, I'm not really good at names. Apologize for that. So if I butcher your name, sorry in advance. And Gabe, we'll call you Gabe C. Hello, Eric. It's my first time on your Google Plus page. I watch your YouTube vids every chance I get. Great stuff, and thanks for what you do. Here's my dilemma. I have an automatic two-wheel drive 2000 Dodge Dakota with a 4.7 liter V8. It has 161,000 miles. Flowmaster exhaust, and I recently replaced all 3 cats in order to pass emissions. I live in California. On cold start and while driving, there is no smoke. However, after idling for about 3 to 5 minutes, I get what seems to be white-blue smoke when I snap the throttle. The smoke will stop after a while and doesn't appear while driving unless I'm sitting at a light for a couple of minutes. When taking off, it'll smoke for a short time and stop. Basically, it seems to smoke after it sits at idle. I added Lucas oil stabilizer and went to 5W30 on the last oil change. No check engine light code showing. Can you give me some possibilities of what might cause this and how to fix it? Thanks for your time. Okay, Gabe, excellent question. First of all, I always recommend that you run the oil that the manufacturer calls for. I strongly suggest, well, let's put it this way. If your car is on its way out, put thicker oil in it. Who cares? If you know the engine's done, so what? But as a general rule, put in the oil that the manufacturer calls for. I'll just put that out first. Now, your problem, what you described, in sitting at idle. Now, if you had an issue with, like, say, piston rings, and you say white-blue smoke, and that's kind of a tricky one. Blue smoke is usually oil. White smoke is usually moisture. So anytime, just through the process of combustion, it creates water, creates moisture, steam. So you see white smoke. White smoke is normal out the exhaust. Now, the bluish tint could indicate burning oil. And what you describe with your symptoms and when you're seeing this smoke sounds like valve seals, if I'm honest. At idle, you're going to produce the highest intake vacuum. And as the valves open and close, if the valve seals aren't good or if the valve is not sealing good inside the guide, then that is the time where it has the most suck, if you will, to draw in any oil. And then you get on it and it blows it out the back. So in that case, and it's not often I say this, but what you're describing sounds a lot like valve seals. That's where I might be looking, but it may not be the seals. It may be the valve guides are worn out or the valves are worn out or something of that nature that's causing the issue, if that's the cause of where your leak is coming from. Now, I'll circle back to the fact that you replaced all 3 catalytic converters. Catalytic converters, there's no moving parts in there. It's just exhaust moving over the top of the catalytic converter. So things like misfires can cause a problem with catalytic converters, or contamination. Contamination from things like burning oil. What I'm getting at here is if you don't address this, what appears to be an underlying problem, you'll be replacing those catalytic converters again, and I'm sure that set you back. So I might, in this instance, in fact, I've done a video about how to remove valve springs and everything inside the car so you don't have to remove the cylinder head. I'm going to post a link in the description to that, and if nothing else, check it out. Just run some compressed air in there, take the valve spring off, and see what you got. If you see a disintegrated valve seal, well, heck, replace them. Go through all of them, replace them all, and then see if the problem still persists. If it doesn't, well, hey, that's a win. Yeah, catalytic converters don't just fail on their own. There's some outside cause, and oil contamination is one of those causes. So I would make this a priority to try to figure this out if that is indeed what you have is leaking valve seals. If it were piston rings, piston ring oil burning normally happens under load. So you really hit it, you're on the highway, you accelerate from a dead stop. If you see that puff of blue smoke coming out the back to start with, that usually indicates a problem with piston rings. So that the compression is sneaking around and it's getting oil past the oil control rings, whatever. But usually under high load is when you'll see that, if it's the bottom end. If it's the top end, what you're describing, that's what it sounds like. So good luck with that, Gabe. We are moving on to Dean M., who has a 1998 Chevy Suburban 3/4 ton K2500 4x4 with a 7.4 liter engine. A year and a half ago, I had the engine rebuilt, and I've never been quite happy with the result. The power seems less than I would expect. Wondering if the timing needs to be adjusted. I have a cheap scan tool which tells me that at 1500 RPM, the spark advance is 26 degrees. This seems too much. Although the advance is computer controlled, I wonder if there is a more fundamental adjustment. This may be related, or it may be a separate question. The engine starts great when it's cold, jumps on as soon as you turn the key. After being parked for 3 to 4 hours, it takes a fairly long crank time before it starts freely. It seems like it lopes along for a few seconds before finally getting into normal running rhythm. What should I look into? Most of the scenarios where, let's see, this thing moves when somebody posts a new question. What should I do? Most of the scenarios where at new, the time of the rebuild. Most of the sensors, okay, most of the sensors were new at the time of rebuild. Sorry, old eyes, getting old. Okay, I don't think it's your timing first off, because you said when it's cold, you turn the key, bam, it starts right up. And I don't know about 98, but I know GMs can be tricky as far as setting the ignition timing. Some you can't mechanically set the timing. Some you have to go in with a computer and actually set the timing that way. 26 degrees at that RPM, computer control. That may be just fine. I would just leave the timing out of the equation. But getting back to the rebuild, I've said this in other videos and I say this a lot. I don't recommend rebuilding over replacement. Replacement with a remanufactured unit from someplace that's reputable. In a situation where it's your daily driver, honestly, I think that's the best way to go. If you're restoring an old classic car in your garage, the parts are hard to find, that kind of thing, rebuild that engine, enjoy it. But get really friendly with the machine shop, really friendly with a machine shop that knows the vehicle that you're working on, so they can give you those helpful tips and hints that can help guide you along the way. So in those instances, rebuild. But if it's your daily driver, I say if it's worth investing into, go for the reman over rebuilding. This is part of the reason. There's so many parts inside the engine. There's so many things that could go wrong. What cam did they put in? How did they go about the rebuild? Did they just throw lifters in it? Did they just throw bearings in it? I mean, rebuild can mean anything. And it could mean that they didn't do a good job. Also, everything's a part. You have to put it all back together. You say all the sensors are new, but did they get them all in there correctly? Did they set the thing up correctly when they were done with the rebuild? This is what I like about remanufactured parts, is that they are ready to go. There's no guesswork. And somebody else is signed off on it. So if you have a problem, you go to them and you say, hey, my installation was good. Your engine not working so good. And they usually work that out. They usually test the stuff before it even goes out the door to ensure that they're not getting those comebacks to begin with. Whenever you rebuild or somebody rebuilds it at a shop, unless they're experienced at it, you know. So in your case, I'm going to say, okay, first of all, it's probably not the timing. If it was the timing, you'd probably have a lot more difficulty starting it. So leave the timing out of it. It does sound like possibly fuel mixture from what I've seen, which could mean vacuum leak, which is something I suggest you look around for. So check around for vacuum leaks. If you got a vacuum leak, that can upset that air fuel mixture and cause the problems that you're having. The hard hot restart could be something with coolant temperature. Could be the coolant temperature sensor is too much resistance, something that's not right there, maybe not hooked up correctly, maybe a little corrosion on the connector that's changing its readings, or there's not enough coolant in the system, maybe there's a little air pocket there, it causes it to cavitate. I could go on and on and on with this, especially since somebody had the thing all apart. There's any number of things that could have happened that could have contributed to this issue. So I wish I could offer you more, but I'll put links in the description to some things that you can try and do that could possibly lead you to a conclusion of what the issue is. But I would take timing off the table for now and make sure that the mechanicals are sound to start with, and then start looking at the sensors and everything else. Especially, I don't recall you saying whether you did or did not have a check engine light, but if you do, that would be an excellent place to start, because that could help clue you into what might be going on. I mean, even little things like people taking off harmonic balancers incorrectly and cracking or breaking tone rings can cause issues like this. Those tone rings send signals to the computer to let the computer know what position the engine is in. If it's cracked or not getting a good signal, it doesn't know what to do. Like I said, skilled people should be doing the rebuilds, not people that do it once in a while. I'm not saying they're not capable, but if it's your driver, you want it to be right. All right, I want to get through some more today. So we want Want to keep moving. Nelson R. Abakra? Sorry. Eric, of 2004 Chevy Tahoe. When time I go over a speed bump, I hear weird sounds, come only the front driver's side, and went to other mechanic and they told me that they didn't know what it could be, and I think it might be the shock. I wanted to know how to find suspension problems. Please help. I did an entire video on this, inspecting the suspension, inspecting things for noises. Shock absorbers are fairly easy to identify if they're bad. Look at the outside of them. If they have an oily residue on the outside, maybe there's some dirt that's collected onto that. Also, if you bounce the vehicle and it continues to bounce more than 3 times, that's a damper failure. So that's an easy one. But they don't normally cause noise. Noises usually come from the moving parts, like your maybe your bushings, control arm bushings, or ball joints are a good one for noises. Stabilizer links are another good one for noises. Some, I don't think there's anything serviceable on the front end of that vehicle. By serviceable, I mean having grease fittings that you can go in and lubricate stuff with. So you may be out of luck there. But once again, I'll post a link in the description to that video that I spoke of that shows you how to go through that inspection, check everything, look for things that are loose, look for orange dust around joints, that type of thing. Orange dust can indicate loose parts, which could indicate where your noise is coming from. All of that is covered in that video, in addition to that FAQ article that I have all about finding noises that could help you. Description, go to the description. Let's see. Okay, we have Falith Ismail. Hey Eric, I love your channel and hope you keep doing the great work. I have a 2001 Jeep Grand Cherokee 4.7 V8 with 180,000. Runs beautiful, but I have a small issue whenever I shift the car from drive when it's cold, and it shifts nice and smooth, but when the car warms up, I could hear a grinding noise, even though there's no gears in the automatic transmission. Not true. There's lots of gears in the automatic transmission. Check engine light of no transmission codes. Do you think it has something to do with the fluid? FYI, transmission got rebuilt around 160K. Thanks for all you do. Okay, so 20,000 miles ago, you had a transmission rebuilt, and now you've got grinding noises when it shifts. I'm going right back to the engine rebuild thing. Automatic transmissions, even more complicated than engines. In fact, I would say the most complicated thing on any automobile is an automatic transmission. The people that do that stuff are like brain surgeons. I mean, they really know what they're doing. They measure all the parts, get it all put together. When you say rebuilt, once again, it wasn't some guy in a shop that just threw a bunch of clutch packs in it and said, hey, have a nice day. Maybe threw a few seals in there at the same time. Maybe put a shift kit in. Don't know. Coming right back to the remanufactured parts. Better off with remanufactured parts than you are with somebody doing something like this, because now you got issues. And those issues, I'm going to say, are probably due to that rebuild in some way, shape, or form. And what happened? No idea. The only way to know is to go in there and check all the pressures, and there's pressures for each one of the gears. There's pressures for the main pressure. There's all kinds of pressures inside the automatic transmission that allow it to work like it does. And these days, especially with the 2001, there are electronic controls that are contributing to that as well. So you've got hydraulic systems, electronic systems, mechanical systems that all need to work together perfectly in order for you not to have grinding noises when it shifts. I'm going to say, well, I don't know what your warranty is. I don't know what they gave you on it, but 20,000 miles is crap for stuff to happen after you've had a rebuild like this. It should be good. It should be good. It's not good. So look at your paperwork, look whatever, look what kind of warranty they gave you, take it back to wherever you got it. Off the top of my head, check the fluid. You said you don't have any codes for anything. But once again, somebody was in there messing with stuff, and it depends on their skill level on, how well they did. And I can't speak for that. But from the sound of what you have, something's not right. And in an automatic transmission, one little seal rolled over can wreck the whole rebuild. Trust me. Rebuild places, the place that remanufacture transmissions, they put it on a dyno, which means it's like they bolted it inside the car or truck or whatever and tested it before they send it out. They do that to check for that little seal that might have been rolled over or messed up during the rebuild. So they know before they send it out the door. It really sucks to go through the process of rebuilding an automatic transmission. Trust me, it sucks. Get it all back up in the vehicle only to find that it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, and you have to take it all back out. That is demoralizing, to say the least. Okay, I wish you luck. I wish you luck with that. Now I'm going to jump around a little bit here. There was another one specifically because I remember seeing you on Facebook, and you would ask me this question, and I did some research for you. James Spalding, I want to change the transmission fluid in my 1995 Mirage manual, and no auto parts stores have manual transmission fluid. Can I run ATF? So I believe you asked me this question also over on my Facebook page. So I did some research. Quick Google search can yield a lot of information, including some of my videos, by the way, on things like this. And I just did a quick Google search on 1985 Mitsubishi Mirage manual transmission fluid. And what I came up with was a page on AMSOIL, which lists all the fluids for the vehicle. And what it lists for manual transmission fluid for your vehicle is synthetic manual and transaxle gear lube 75W90 APIGL4 is what it says. And it doesn't say how many quarts it takes, so I can't tell you that. But what it's saying here for the manual transmission is basically gear oil, 75W90, synthetic 75W90 GL4. So you don't need to look for a special fluid according to this. You just need to find gear oil 75W90. And the internet is a tremendous resource. Use it to your advantage. So like I said, I actually looked that up, and I wanted to make sure that I got to that question. Oh, here's another one from Anthony Pristas. Sorry. Greetings, Eric. I have a 1999 Honda CRV, 164,000 miles with a check engine light, misfire codes P1399, P0300, P0304, and P0302. Is there a sequence of diagnostics that could definitely tell whether or not the head needs to be replaced due to too tight of valve lash, short of removing the head? Honda service shop says it needs a new head. We had a misfire codes for about 6 months prior, and they adjusted the valves and everything seemed fine. Also replaced the timing belt at the time of the adjustment. Now the check engine light is back on above codes. If really cold, it blinks until it warms up. In speaking with the Honda service manager, I think they're presuming based on this that the issue being common with 99 CRVs. Dry compression test performed by an independent mechanic comes back okay, though he said the compression was less than 200 PSI, which seems high for me for this car. No wet compression or leak down test was done. He also adjusted the idle, which was very high. His opinion was that the head was probably fine, but didn't know what the problem was. Honda service says that if a valve is mushroomed, the test may not indicate a problem. Thank you for taking the time to answer questions from us laymen, and your videos are the best. You know, whenever you're getting conflicting information and you go to several shops like this, I'm always, I have to take a breath here. First on my list, never touch the idle on a Honda. I'm just going to come out here and say this right now. Anybody watching, stop adjusting the idle on a Honda. That idle screw is not to be messed with. That is the absolute last thing you want to touch. Stop touching it. Just stop it. Okay, I hope you get that, because that's not how you do it. There are other things that contribute. And if you just go in there, stick a screwdriver in and start twisting it, the computer is going to try and compensate for the fact that you're adjusting that screw. There's a procedure you have to go through in order to adjust the base idle on a Honda. Secondly, that is not the first place to go. So, I mean, there's foreplay that needs to happen before you jump right in, okay? And in this case, there's a lot of things going on here. And the mushrooming at the top of the valves means nothing because the valves get adjusted. So the valves are adjustable. So that whole mushrooming thing, I'm throwing that out the door, okay? What I'm going to say, and I'm assuming you have a B-Series engine, it's a 1999. The B-Series engine, especially with the timing belts. I have a B-Series timing belt video that's out there that covers this. It is extremely difficult to get the timing belt tension correct. And as a result, a lot of these engines are out there with loose timing belts. Loose timing belts on the B-Series engine makes the cams do this as they're rotating. So every time the cam lobe comes around, the spring, the valve spring pushes against that valve in resistance. And once that lobe reaches the other side of that resistance, it pushes back in the opposite direction. So the cams, when they turn, do what I call chunking. So instead of a nice smooth rotation, they've got a every time with a loose belt. And that slack just bounces around and bounces around. I've seen loose timing belts on these engines cause more problems with misfire and more BS than anything else. And guess what? You just had a timing belt replaced. If you take that valve cover off, and this is what I suggest you do, if you take that valve cover off and you can take your finger and move that timing belt a good amount, rotate the engine a little bit, because like I said, it'll chunk around. In some spots it'll be loose, in some spots it'll be tight. But if you can take that valve cover off and you can move that belt any significant amount, that should be about banjo tight, then I would say that's the first place I would go for the problem, because guess what else is connected to that camshaft on the other side of that timing belt? Yes, the distributor. So not only does it screw up cam timing and everything going on with the valves, but it also screws up ignition timing on top of it. Like I said, tight timing belt on that engine. It needs to be firm and snug. And I go through the procedure in the video, but I'll briefly describe it here. There's a bolt going through the timing cover just above the crankshaft. I would remove the accessories. Take the power steering belt off, take the air conditioning belt off. You don't have to like remove the engine mount that's down below to get the belt completely off. You're just going to be setting the tension, but you need to get those things out of the way in order to access that bolt that's sticking out through the timing cover. It's 14 millimeter. Loosen it. Get everything to actually get everything to TDC at that point. So timing belt, the camshaft, top dead center, they should be lined. Here's the other thing. Make sure the darn thing is in time. Dual overhead cam engines are difficult to get in time sometimes. There's a mark running between those two camshafts, those two gears, that needs to line up flush with the cylinder head. Then there needs to be the mark on the lower timing cover, which you'll be able to see because you're not taking the lower timing cover off. So get everything lined up top dead center. Loosen that bolt. Put your hand on the front cam. Take the crankshaft and rotate it counterclockwise. I would say about a quarter turn. And while holding that front cam, that helps load up that tensioner when you're setting the tension. Rotate that cam about a quarter of a turn. Keep your hand on that front cam to keep it from rotating. Give it some resistance. Then go and tighten that bolt and you should be fine. Rotate it around a couple of times to check your slack. There's going to be a little. Like I said, it's hard to get it at the right tension, but there's going to be a little. But that's the procedure set up by Honda. I've done it that way for years and years and years, and that's the way it works. But stay away from those darn idle screws. And as far as valve adjustments, they should be done by people that are familiar with doing valve adjustments. Just so happens I got a video coming out Friday on a K-series valve adjustment. That being said, that's where I'll go first. Check for a loose timing belt. B-series engines, you get a misfire, make sure your timing belt is nice and snug. It doesn't need to be, don't sit there with a pry bar and crank on that tensioner trying to put more tension on it. That's going to cause a noise when it runs. You get it too tight, it'll be noisy. The way I just described is the way to do it. And it's also covered in that video. I mentioned links in the description to stuff. Well, looking at the time, I'm a bit past it right now. So I hope I covered many of those questions that a lot of you had. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to get to any more, unfortunately. So that is closing out this show for this year, 2014, and live Google Plus shows. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your comments, all that stuff. Thank you for, hanging out with the show and make it into the success that it's been. I'm going to continue on in 2015. Coming back January 7th, I'll be posting about it on my social networks beforehand. That's the best time to post the questions. As you can see in this show, I started at the bottom. I wanted to work my way up. Got a little wordy. Apologize for that, but I hope I conveyed some useful information to you. Once again, YouTube comments will not be answered. Apologies for that. Questions posted to the Google Plus page after the event concludes also won't be answered. However, 365, 24/7, EricTheCarGuy.com is open. It's there for you. It has a lot of this information. I wrote it all out. That's what the FAQ section is. Added my videos to it that pertain to that stuff. I've done everything I can to try to make it easy for you to find information to solve your automotive issues. And then some. We have the forum over there that you can post your question, and we'll do what we can to help you over there. Anyway, once again, thanks to my friends at Zep for the stuff that they sent me. Thank you for watching. And I close each of my videos, including these live shows, with be safe, have fun, stay dirty. I'll see you next year, and have a happy and safe holiday. See you next time.